Tonight's story is about emptiness, not as a cold void, but as a gentle spaciousness that lets everything breathe. In Zen and Buddhism, emptiness often means that things don't exist as fixed, separate, permanent objects. Everything is changing, everything is connected, and everything depends on everything else. When you see that clearly, life can feel lighter, less tight in the mind, less heavy in the heart. So let your body rest. Let your thoughts come and go like quiet clouds. You don't need to solve anything tonight. Just listen and soften. A student once visited a Zen teacher carrying many questions and even more certainty. The student bowed politely and began speaking almost immediately, words tumbling out one after another. "I have studied many teachings," the student said. "I have read sutras, listened to talks, reflected deeply. I understand suffering, impermanence, and non-attachment. I am ready for the highest truth. Please give it to me." The teacher listened without interruption, nodding gently, saying nothing. After a moment, the teacher reached for a teapot and began to pour tea into a small porcelain cup placed between them. The tea streamed smoothly at first, filling the cup with warmth and fragrance, but the teacher did not stop pouring. The liquid reached the rim and then flowed over the edge, spilling onto the table, dripping softly onto the floor. The student fell silent. "Teacher," the student said at last, "the cup is full, it's overflowing." The teacher set the teapot down and looked at the student with calm eyes. "Yes," the teacher said, "and so are you." The room was quiet. No scolding followed, no lecture, just the sound of tea slowly dripping and the student's breath becoming more noticeable. "You come to me," the teacher continued softly, "already filled with ideas, explanations, conclusions, and expectations. You want truth added on top of what you already carry, but how can anything be received when there is no space left to receive it?" The student felt a gentle discomfort, not anger, not shame, but something closer to recognition. It was true. Even now the mind was busy. What does this mean? Is this a test? How should I respond? The teacher seemed to sense this and smiled slightly. "Emptiness," the teacher said, "is not ignorance. It is availability." The student looked at the cup again. Tea pooled around it, shining faintly in the lamplight. The cup itself hadn't changed. It was still useful, still intact, but only when it was full did it become incapable of receiving more. "So often," the teacher went on, "we treat the mind like a storage room. We collect beliefs, opinions, strategies, memories, fears, and hopes. We pile them carefully, thinking that more will make us safer, wiser, more complete." The teacher paused. "But wisdom does not grow by accumulation alone. Sometimes it grows by making room." The student's shoulders softened slightly. "To be empty," the teacher said, "is not to be nothing. It is to be open. The sky is empty, yet it holds the sun, the moon, and every drifting cloud. A bowl is empty, and because of that it can hold food. A room is empty, and because of that you can rest inside it." The teacher gestured gently toward the student's chest. "When the mind is crowded, even peace feels like an intrusion." The student sat quietly now, listening not only to the teacher's voice, but to the subtle sensations of the body, the weight of the legs, the rhythm of breathing, the quiet tension that had been there all along. "You do not need to throw your knowledge away," the teacher said, "but you do need to stop gripping it. Truth is not something you can stack neatly on top of your identity." The teacher lifted the cup, emptied it carefully into a bowl and set it back down, clean, simple, ready. Notice, the teacher said, the cup is still a cup. Nothing has been lost, but now it can receive again. The student watched the empty cup. Something in the chest felt looser, as if a tight knot had begun to untie itself without effort. Emptiness, the student realized, was not a punishment. It was a relief. Tonight, you can let this story settle gently in you. You don't need to empty your mind by force. You don't need to chase thoughts away or silence yourself. Emptiness is not created by struggle. It appears naturally when grasping relaxes. If thoughts arise, let them be like tea already poured. You can acknowledge them, then allow the cup to become spacious again. Feel your breath as it enters. Cool, light. Feel it leave, warm, soft. With each exhale, imagine a little more space appearing inside you. Not a dramatic clearing, just a quiet openness, the kind that doesn't demand attention. You may notice ideas drifting through your mind about tomorrow, or memories from earlier today. Let them pass without argument. There is nothing you need to fix right now. Like the cup on the table, you are allowed to be empty for a while. Empty of striving, empty of explanation, empty of the need to understand everything before you can rest. In this emptiness there is no lack. There is only room. Room for the body to sink into the bed, room for the breath to slow, room for awareness to soften its edges. And as the cup rests quietly, doing nothing at all, you may find yourself doing the same, held by the simple freedom of not having to carry so much. Just for this night, let yourself be open. Let the tea settle. Let the cup remain empty. And let sleep arrive on its own. A monk once asked a teacher, "What is enlightenment?" The teacher did not answer right away. Instead, they walked together to a small pond behind the monastery. It was early evening. The air was cool, and the world seemed to be slowing down. Crickets had begun their soft rhythm, and the surface of the water lay almost perfectly still. "Look," the teacher said quietly. The moon had risen above the trees, round and pale, and its reflection rested on the pond as if it belonged there. The light shimmered gently, a bright presence floating on dark water. The monk gazed at the reflection, feeling a sense of calm. "It's beautiful," he said. The teacher nodded. "Yes." Then the monk leaned forward and reached toward the water, trying to catch the moon in his hands. His fingers broke the surface, and instantly the reflection shattered, ripples spreading outward, the moon fractured into trembling pieces. The monk pulled his hand back, confused. "It disappeared." The teacher smiled softly. "Did it?" They waited. The ripples slowly faded. The water stilled, and once again the moon returned, whole and luminous, exactly as before. "You cannot hold it," the teacher said. "You cannot trap it, define it, or make it stay by force. The moon appears only when the water is calm." The monk sat back on the grass, watching the reflection in silence. The teacher sat beside him. "So many people think enlightenment is something to seize," the teacher continued. "They believe it must be captured through effort, tightened focus, or perfect understanding. They reach for it the way you reach for the moon." The teacher let a hand hover just above the water's surface without touching it. "But the harder you grasp, the more it disappears." The monk noticed how even the slightest movement disturbed the reflection. The moon wasn't fragile, but the water's stillness was. "Emptiness," the teacher said, "is not something you obtain. It is something that reveals itself when grasping stops." The monk felt a quiet recognition. His own mind was rarely still. Thoughts rose constantly, Plans, doubts, memories, judgments. Each thought felt important, urgent, demanding attention. He realized how often he tried to hold peace the same way, tightening around it, afraid to lose it. When you try to possess calm, the teacher said, you create ripples. When you try to force clarity, you agitate the mind. But when the mind rests, clarity reflects itself naturally. They sat together, breathing slowly. The night deepened around them. Notice, the teacher continued, the moon is never inside the water, and yet it appears there perfectly. In the same way, truth does not belong to the mind. The mind simply reflects it when conditions are right. The monk closed his eyes briefly and listened. To the water, to the insects, to his own breathing. He noticed how thoughts still came, but they felt less solid now, less demanding. Thoughts are like ripples, the teacher said, as if reading his mind. They are not enemies. Water without ripples is not better water. But when you stop stirring, the ripples naturally settle. The monk asked, "So what should I do?" The teacher answered gently, "Very little." They remained by the pond, doing nothing special. The teacher did not instruct the monk to meditate harder or think deeper. They simply sat. The moon climbed higher. The reflection shifted slightly, stretching and reshaping itself across the pond. Even in its stillness, it was never fixed. Emptiness, the teacher said quietly, means seeing things as they are, without trying to pin them down. The moment you say, "I have it," you lose it. The moment you say, "This must stay," it changes. The monk felt the truth of this not as an idea, but as a gentle loosening in the chest. The constant effort to hold life together began to feel unnecessary. Your mind, the teacher said, is like this pond. If you're always reaching into it, judging, comparing, grasping, it cannot reflect clearly, but when you allow it to be, wisdom appears on its own. The teacher stood up slowly. "Come," they said, "it is time to return." The monk lingered for a moment longer, watching the moon in the water. He felt no urge to reach out again. "Tonight, you can sit beside this pond too. You don't need to still your mind by force. You don't need to chase thoughts away. Simply notice when you are reaching, trying to fix, control, or capture what you feel. Let your awareness hover gently, like a hand resting above the water, not touching. Feel the body lying where it is. Feel the breath moving without effort. Thoughts may come. That's all right. Each thought is a ripple. You don't need to stop the ripple. Just don't stir the water further. When a thought fades, notice the quiet that remains. When another thought arises, let it pass the same way. Peace is not something you grasp. Clarity is not something you chase. Like the moon, it appears when the water rests, and as your breathing slows and the mind softens its grip, you may notice moments of stillness returning on their own, quiet, complete, needing nothing. Stay by the pond a little longer, let the water settle, let the moon shine, and when sleep comes, let it come the same way, without reaching. As evening settled over the lake, a man set out alone in a small wooden boat. The sky was dimming into shades of blue and grey, and the surface of the water lay calm and wide, stretching quietly in every direction. He rowed slowly, enjoying the rhythm of the oars dipping in and out of the water, enjoying the rare stillness of a mind with nowhere urgent to go. The lake felt peaceful, almost empty. The man breathed deeply and let his thoughts wander without effort. Then, without warning, another boat drifted out of the mist and struck his boat hard on the side. The sudden impact jolted him. His heart jumped and heat rushed up through his chest. "Hey!" he shouted instinctively. "Watch where you're going!" The other boat bumped again, scraping along the edge. Annoyance sharpened into anger. "Are you blind?" he called out, gripping his oar tightly, already forming accusations in his mind. But as the mist thinned, something unexpected appeared. The other boat was empty. No rower, no careless stranger, no one to glare back at him. Just a weathered vessel drifting freely, carried by the slow current of the lake. The man froze, his words hanging awkwardly in the air. The anger that had surged so quickly had nowhere to land. There was no one to blame, no one to correct, no one to defeat. The boat bumped once more, softly this time, then drifted past. The man felt a strange mixture of emotions rise and fall, embarrassment at his reaction, relief that no conflict was needed, and finally a quiet amusement. He let out a slow breath and laughed softly to himself. Sitting there in the fading light, he noticed how quickly his mind had created a story. Someone is careless, someone has wronged me, someone deserves my anger, and how quickly that story collapsed when the someone vanished. The lake returned to stillness as if nothing had happened. The man rested his oars and allowed the boat to drift. His heartbeat slowed. The tension in his shoulders softened. He felt lighter, as though he had set something heavy down without realizing he was carrying it. Later, when he told a Zen teacher about the incident, the teacher nodded knowingly. "This," the teacher said, "is the teaching of the empty boat." When we believe there is a solid person behind every disturbance, the teacher continued, we become tense and defensive. We prepare for battle even when none is needed. The man listened closely. But often, the teacher said, life is like an empty boat. Sounds, delays, mistakes, and misunderstandings drift into us without intention. The mind, however, fills the boat with a driver, someone to accuse, someone to resist. The teacher paused, and when we discover the boat is empty, the anger has no home. The man thought about how many times his days were disrupted by small collisions, harsh words, unexpected problems, memories that surfaced uninvited. Each time his mind reacted as if someone had deliberately aimed at him. Emptiness, the teacher said, doesn't mean nothing happens. It means there is no fixed enemy behind everything that happens. That night, the man lay awake, reflecting on the lake. He noticed how often his thoughts collided with him the same way that boat had. Sudden worries, self-criticism, flashes of regret. Each thought arrived with the feeling of an attacker. But what if those thoughts were empty boats, not commands, not truths, not enemies, just mental events drifting across the surface of awareness? Tonight, you may notice the same thing. A thought bumps into you about tomorrow, about the past, about something unfinished. The body tenses automatically, as if preparing to defend itself. But before you engage, pause. Look closely. Is there really someone there? Or is it just an empty boat? Old conditioning, habit, fatigue, momentum, drifting by on the water of the mind. You don't need to argue with it. You don't need to shout at it. You don't even need to push it away. An empty boat doesn't require a response. Feel your body resting where it is. Feel the breath rising and falling gently. If a thought bumps into you, notice the contact, and then notice how it continues drifting on its own. Anger, anxiety, and irritation often depend on the idea of a solid other. When that solidity dissolves, the emotion loosens its grip. This doesn't mean you stop caring or become passive. It simply means you stop carrying unnecessary weight. The lake inside you is wide. Most things that disturb it are passing boats, not personal attacks. Inhale. Feel the steadiness of your own boat. Exhale. Allow what is not yours to drift away. The water knows how to return to stillness, and as the night deepens and your awareness becomes softer, you may find that fewer boats appear at all, or that when they do, they pass without leaving a trace. Let the lake hold you. Let the empty boats come and go, and let sleep arrive, quietly, on calm water. A student once approached a teacher with a question that had been quietly troubling the mind for a long time. "Teacher," the student said, "do things truly exist, or do they not?" The teacher did not answer immediately. Instead, they raised one hand and held it calmly in the air. "With this hand," the teacher said, "we live in the everyday world." The student watched closely. "In this world," the teacher continued, "you wake up in the morning, you feel hunger, you speak to other people, you feel joy, disappointment, love, and loss. You have responsibilities, you make promises, you feel pain, and you try to avoid it." The teacher raised the other hand. "With this hand," they said, "we see emptiness." The student felt a subtle shift, as if something had been gently turned in the mind. "In emptiness," the teacher went on, "nothing stands alone. No object, no person, no thought exist by itself from its own side. Everything arises through conditions, changes moment by moment, and fades when those conditions change." The student frowned slightly. "So which is real?" the student asked. The teacher slowly brought both hands together, palms touching. "Both," the teacher said. The student sat in silence, feeling the weight of the answer without yet understanding it. "For many people," the teacher continued, "this teaching feels confusing. The mind wants a single answer. Either things are real or they are illusions. Either life matters or nothing matters." The teacher shook their head gently. "That kind of thinking causes great suffering. In the everyday world," the teacher said, "your feelings matter. If someone speaks harshly, it hurts. If someone shows kindness, it warms you. If you are hungry, you must eat. If you are tired, you must rest." The teacher paused. "To deny this is not wisdom, it is avoidance." The student felt relieved hearing this. "But," the teacher continued, "if you believe this everyday world is all that exists, solid, fixed, permanent, then you suffer in another way. You cling, you panic when things change, you fear loss as if it were destruction." The teacher lowered both hands into their lap. "The teaching of emptiness does not erase the everyday world," they said. "It softens it." The student listened carefully. "When you see emptiness," teacher said, "you understand that anger is real, but it is not permanent. Fear is real, but it is not who you are. Pain is real, but it is not solid or fixed forever." The teacher leaned slightly forward. "Think of a rainbow. You can see it clearly. You can describe it. You can enjoy its beauty, but you cannot grab it or own it. It depends on light, water, and your position. Change the conditions and it disappears." The student nodded slowly. "Your life is like that," the teacher said, "fully experienced and yet not graspable." The student asked, "Then how should I live?" The teacher smiled. "With both hands." The student felt something settle. "Use the hand of the everyday world to care," the teacher said, "to love, to act responsibly, to speak gently, to show up when needed. Use the hand of emptiness," the teacher continued, "to let go, to forgive, to stop demanding permanence from what cannot give it. The teacher held their hands out again, one on each side. If you try to live with only one hand, they said, you will struggle. The student imagined trying to live only in emptiness, ignoring feelings, dismissing pain, floating above life. It felt cold and unbalanced. Then the student imagined living only in the everyday world, clutching every moment, fearing every change, exhausted by constant resistance. Neither felt peaceful. That night, as the student walked back through the monastery grounds, this teaching echoed quietly. The sound of footsteps on gravel, the smell of night air, the sensation of cool wind on skin, all of it felt real, and yet none of it needed to be held tightly. Tonight, you can rest in this understanding too. You're here, in a body, on a bed. The weight of the blanket is real. The rhythm of breathing is real. And at the same time, everything you're experiencing is moving, shifting, changing. Sensations arise and pass. Thoughts appear and fade. Feelings swell and soften. You do not need to choose between these truths. You can feel fully without clinging. If a worry appears, acknowledge it kindly. It belongs to the everyday world. Then remember emptiness. This worry is made of thoughts, sensations, and energy. It does not define you. It will change. Inhale, feel the body. Exhale, feel the space around the feeling. Two truths, not in conflict, but in balance. As your breathing deepens, you may notice how this balance brings relief. Nothing has to disappear for you to rest. Nothing has to be solved. You are allowed to be human and allowed to be spacious. The hands come together gently, and in that gentle joining, the mind can finally relax enough to sleep. A traveller once asked a Zen nun, "What is emptiness?" The nun did not answer with words. Instead, she invited the traveller to walk with her. They left the path and moved into a quiet bamboo grove just beyond the temple grounds. The stalks rose tall and slender, their green surfaces catching the last light of the day. The air was cool, and the world seemed to slow with each step. They stood together among the bamboo and waited. A gentle wind passed through the grove, and the bamboo responded immediately. Stalks brushed against one another, leaves rustled, hollow chambers echoed softly. The sound was neither loud nor silent, but something in between, a living whisper that moved through the space. The traveller listened, at first with curiosity, then with a growing sense of calm. When the wind faded, the bamboo became quiet again. No echo lingered, no trace of sound remained. The nun turned to the traveller and said, "When the wind comes, bamboo sounds. When the wind goes, bamboo is silent." The traveller nodded, unsure what to say. "The bamboo does not hold on to the sound," the nun continued, "and it does not fear the silence." They stood quietly, surrounded by tall green stillness. "Emptiness," the nun said gently, "is like this." The traveller thought of emptiness as something cold, blank, or lifeless, but what stood before them was alive, responsive, and at ease. The nun reached out and lightly touched a bamboo stalk. It bent easily under her hand, then returned to its place without resistance. "Bamboo is strong because it is hollow," she said. "If it were solid, it would snap in the wind." The traveller felt something shift inside. The idea of strength had always been associated with rigidity, with holding firm. Yet here was a living example of the opposite. "People try to be strong by filling themselves," the nun said, "with opinions, identities, defences, expectations. But when life's wind comes, and it always comes, they break." Another breeze passed through the grove. The bamboo sang again, each stalk moving freely, none resisting the wind, none trying to control it. The bamboo does not decide which wind it will allow, the nun said. It does not say, I will move only for gentle breezes but not for storms. It receives what comes. The traveller felt the cool air brush against their skin and noticed how their own body responded. Tiny adjustments, subtle shifts, without conscious effort. Your mind, the nun said, can be like this grove. The traveller closed their eyes and listened again. The sounds felt closer now, not outside, but within. When thoughts come, the nun continued, you don't need to trap them or analyse them endlessly. Let them pass through. When thoughts leave, don't chase after them. She paused, letting the quiet deepen. Silence is not emptiness, she said. Silence is what remains when you stop clinging. The traveller realised how often silence felt uncomfortable, how quickly the mind rushed to fill it with noise, plans and commentary. Yet here, among the bamboo, silence felt gentle, even welcoming. The bamboo doesn't wonder whether it's doing the right thing, the nun said. It doesn't ask if it is enlightened enough. It simply responds moment by moment. Another gust moved through the grove, stronger this time. The stalks bent, leaned, knocked softly together, then slowly straightened as the wind passed. Notice, the nun said. Nothing was damaged, nothing was lost. The traveller felt the teaching settling not as an idea, but as a bodily understanding. Emptiness wasn't absence. It was responsiveness, without resistance. As night began to fall, the nun and the traveller turned back toward the path. Later, as you rest now, you can become like the bamboo. You don't need to force your mind into silence. Silence will come on its own when the wind passes. Thoughts may arise about the day, about tomorrow, about things unfinished. Let them move through you like wind through hollow stems. You don't need to cling to the pleasant thoughts. You don't need to push away the difficult ones. Feel your breath enter, cool and quiet. Feel it leave, warm and soft. If a feeling stirs, let it stir. If it fades, let it fade. There's no need to fear the empty moments between thoughts. Those moments are not blank. They are alive, spacious and safe. Like bamboo, you are allowed to bend. You are allowed to be open. You are allowed to rest without holding yourself rigid. As the night deepens and the winds of the mind slow, you may notice a gentle quiet spreading naturally, without effort. Let the bamboo stand. Let the wind pass. Let the silence remain. And in that simple openness, allow sleep to arrive. In a quiet courtyard, monks gathered early in the morning around a low wooden table. Bowls of finely coloured sand were arranged carefully nearby, reds like embers, blues like deep water, yellows like sunlight softened by dust. Each monk moved with calm precision, hands steady, breath slow. They had begun the creation of a mandala. Hour after hour they worked in silence. Thin metal funnels guided streams of sand into intricate patterns, circles within circles, symbols unfolding outward with astonishing care. Every grain was placed deliberately. No movement was rushed. No detail was treated as unimportant. Visitors came and went, watching in hushed awe. Some whispered in amazement. Others stood quietly, afraid to disturb the fragile beauty forming before their eyes. As the day passed, the mandala grew more complex. Colours met and blended at their edges. Symmetry emerged, delicate and exact, as if the design had always existed and was simply being revealed. By evening, the mandala was complete. It was breathtaking. People leaned closer, careful not to breathe too hard. Cameras were raised. Someone murmured, "This is perfect." Another whispered, "It should be preserved." The monks sat quietly around the finished mandala, gazing at it without pride or attachment. They did not smile more than usual. They did not cling to the result of their labour. After a long pause, one monk stood. Without ceremony, he reached out and drew his hand slowly across the mandala. The coloured sand blurred instantly. Patterns collapsed into flowing streaks. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Another monk joined him, then another. Soon, the intricate design, created with such care, was gone, reduced to a simple mixture of colours, indistinguishable from one another. Someone finally asked, unable to hide their distress, "Why would you destroy something so beautiful?" One of the monks looked up gently and said, "So that we remember." "Remember what?" the visitor asked. "That everything made will be unmade," the monk replied, "and that beauty was never meant to be owned." The sand was gathered carefully and placed into a bowl. Later, it would be poured into a river, returning to movement, to circulation, to the wider world. Nothing had been wasted. The mandala had fulfilled its purpose. In Buddhism, this ritual is not an act of loss, but an act of clarity. It reminds the mind of impermanence, not as a threat, but as a natural rhythm. Everything that arises will pass. Everything that passes once arose, and in that truth there is an unexpected tenderness. We suffer not because things end, but because we demand they do not. We build our lives like mandalas, days shaped by effort, care, and intention. Conversations, achievements, relationships, worries, identities. Each grain feels important while it is being placed. But when the moment passes, the mind often resists. This should have lasted. I should still have that. I shouldn't feel this way now. Emptiness teaches a different way of seeing. Nothing is wrong when something ends. Tonight, your day is a sand mandala. Every thought you had today, every concern, every small irritation, every hope is made of grains that can now be released. You don't have to replay the conversations. You don't have to refine the patterns. You don't have to keep the design intact. Let the hands sweep gently across the mind. If a memory arises, acknowledge it softly. Then let it blur. If a worry appears, notice its shape. Then allow it to dissolve. Inhale, placing the sand. Exhale, sweeping it away. Nothing meaningful is lost in this letting go. The experience has already been lived. The effort has already been made. What remains is space. Space for the body to rest. Space for the breath to deepen. Space for awareness to widen without effort. Like the monks, you don't need to rush this process. Let the unmaking be slow and kind. Feel the bed supporting you. Feel the weight of the day lifting grain by grain. The mandala was never meant to stay, neither was today. And just as the sand returns to the river, your thoughts can return to the quiet flow of sleep. Nothing to hold, nothing to protect, nothing to finish, only the gentle relief of emptiness and the deep permission to rest. A student once sat before a teacher and asked a question that felt both simple and impossible. "If everything is empty," the student said, "then who am I?" The teacher looked at the student for a long moment, not as if searching for an answer, but as if listening for something beneath the question. "Tell me," the teacher said gently, "who are you?" The student answered quickly, almost automatically, saying their name. The teacher shook their head slowly. "That is a sound people make when they want your attention." The student paused, then tried again. "I am a daughter, a friend, a worker, a seeker." The teacher smiled softly. Those are roles. You put them on and take them off, even if you don't always notice. The student felt a faint unease. Each answer that had once felt solid was being set aside so easily. "I am my thoughts," the student said after a moment. "My memories, my personality." The teacher remained quiet for a while, letting the words hang in the air. Then the teacher asked, "Are your thoughts always the same?" "No," the student admitted. "Are your memories complete and fixed?" the teacher asked. "No." "And your personality? Has it been exactly the same your whole life?" The student felt something soften. "No," they said quietly. The teacher nodded. "Then how can these be who you are?" Silence filled the room, not an awkward silence, but a wide one. The student felt the mind searching, reaching for something firm to stand on. Every familiar answer seemed to slip away before it could settle. "Before the name," the teacher said, "before the roles, before the thoughts, what remains?" The student could not answer. At first, this felt unsettling, like standing at the edge of something vast without a railing. But as the silence stretched on, the unease began to dissolve into something quieter, almost peaceful. The teacher spoke again, very softly. "When you stop trying to define yourself, you do not disappear. You simply stop being confined." The student noticed the sensation of breathing, the rise and fall of the chest. It had been happening all along, without needing a label. "Who you think you are," the teacher continued, "is a collection of habits and stories. Useful, yes. Necessary for moving through the world, but not permanent, not solid." The teacher gestured gently toward the student. "You are more like a river than a statue. Always here, yet never the same." The student felt tears unexpectedly rise, not from sadness, but from relief. "So I don't need to figure out who I am?" the student asked. The teacher smiled. "You need to experience who you are." They sat together quietly. "Notice," the teacher said. "When you say, 'I am anxious,' anxiety becomes your identity. When you say, 'I am broken,' brokenness becomes your home. But when you see anxiety as a passing state, and brokenness as a story the mind tells, something loosens." The student felt this loosening now, as if a tight knot around the heart had been gently untied. "This self you defend so fiercely," the teacher said, "is exhausting. It must be protected, justified, improved, explained. Emptiness allows you to rest from that labour." The student realised how much energy had been spent trying to be someone acceptable, someone successful, someone whole. "What remains," the teacher said, "is awareness itself, quiet, open, unchanged by the roles it observes." The student closed their eyes, not instructed to do so, but moved by a natural impulse. Thoughts still came, but they felt different, lighter, less sticky, like clouds passing through a wide sky. "You're not required to locate yourself tonight," the teacher said. "You're allowed to let go of the question. Now, as you lie here, you can do the same. You don't need to define yourself to rest. You don't need to understand who you are to sleep. Notice the body breathing on its own. Notice sensations appearing and fading. Thoughts may say, 'This is me.' You can let them speak and pass. Feel how identity softens when it is not being held tightly. You're not a fixed thing trying to fall asleep. You are a living process, already resting. Before the name, before the story, before the effort to be someone, there is simply awareness, warm and open, holding everything gently. And in that openness, nothing needs to be solved. You are allowed to drift, allowed to fade, allowed to sleep without carrying a self into the darkness. Just this quiet being, resting, breathing, and letting go. A student once devoted themselves completely to studying the teachings. They memorized passages, collected quotes, learned symbols, and debated fine points of doctrine late into the night. Their shelves filled with books, their mind filled with explanations. One day, the student approached a teacher with confidence and said, "I understand the teachings very well now." The teacher did not argue. Instead, they stepped outside with the student and stood beneath the open sky. The night was clear, and the moon hung bright above the rooftops. The teacher raised a finger and pointed upward. "Look," the teacher said. The student's eyes followed the finger and they focused on it. The shape of the hand, the curve of the knuckle, the direction it indicated. The teacher noticed and sighed quietly. "Do not confuse the finger for the moon." The student blinked, startled, and finally looked beyond the finger. There it was, silent, luminous, distant, complete. "All teachings," the teacher said gently, "are fingers. Words, stories, rituals, practices, every one of them exists only to point." The student felt something loosen in the chest. "If you cling to the finger," the teacher continued, "you miss what it points to. And if you argue about whose finger is best, you forget to look up at all." They stood quietly for a while, letting the moonlight settle over them. "The mind loves symbols," the teacher said. "It loves clarity and control. It wants something it can grasp and say, 'This is it.' But truth is not graspable." The student thought of all the effort spent collecting understanding, all the time spent trying to perfect an explanation. "You don't need to abandon the teachings," the teacher said, as if hearing the thought. "You simply need to stop mistaking them for the destination." The teacher lowered their hand. The moon remained. "Emptiness," the teacher said, "is not found in the words that describe it. It is found in the space where words fall silent." The student felt the truth of this not as an idea, but as a quiet opening. That night the student returned to their room and sat alone. The teachings echoed in the mind, but now they felt lighter, less demanding. The student noticed the simple presence of breath, the feeling of sitting, the sound of distant wind. There was nothing to analyze. Tonight you can rest in the same simplicity. These words you're hearing are fingers too. They are not something you must remember or master. They are only here to gently guide your attention back to what is already present. Feel the weight of your body where it rests. Feel the subtle movement of breath. If the mind starts to grasp, trying to understand perfectly, trying to extract a lesson, you can notice that effort and smile inwardly. Then look beyond the finger. The moon is not far away. The moon is the direct experience of this moment. The darkness behind closed eyes, the softness of the bed, the gentle quiet between thoughts. You don't need to name it. You don't need to explain it. When thoughts arise, they are fingers too, pointing toward memories, plans, worries. You don't have to follow each one. Let them point, and then let them lower. Return again and again to what does not require interpretation. Inhale, sensation. Exhale, sensation. The mind may try to hold on to calm. That is another finger. Let it go. The mind may wonder if it is doing this right. That is another finger. Let it go. What remains does not need approval. The moon does not care if it is understood. It shines anyway. As your attention softens and effort fades, the distance between finger and moon dissolves. There is no need to point, no need to search. Just this quiet presence, wide and gentle. And in that presence, sleep can arrive naturally, without instruction, without explanation, without needing to be understood. A student once approached a Zen master and asked, "How does understanding change the way we see the world?" The master answered in a way that seemed almost too simple. "Before you study," the master said, "mountains are mountains and rivers are rivers." The student nodded. That made sense. "While you study," the master continued, "mountains are no longer mountains and rivers are no longer rivers." The student frowned, unsure. "And after understanding," the master said, smiling softly, "mountains are once again mountains and rivers are once again rivers." The student sat with this for a long time. At first, the teaching felt confusing, even frustrating. The mind wanted a clear progression, a permanent transformation that would replace confusion with certainty. But this teaching seemed to circle back to where it began. Seeing the student struggle, the master invited them to walk. They walked along a narrow path that wound through hills and down toward a river. The evening light softened the landscape. Shadows stretched slowly and the air felt cool and calm. "Look at the mountain," the master said, pointing gently. The student saw a solid form rising from the earth, ancient, unmoving, reliable. "This is how the world first appears to us," the master said. "Clear, solid, obvious. Things are what they seem to be. You are who you think you are. Life feels fixed." They continued walking. "As you begin to inquire," the master said, "you start to see cracks in this certainty. You realize the mountain is not a single thing, but rock, soil, erosion, time. You realize the river is not a thing either, but movement, rainfall, melting snow." They reached the riverbank. The water flowed steadily, never stopping, never repeating itself. "At this stage," the master continued, "everything becomes unstable. Identity dissolves. Meaning feels uncertain. The world no longer feels solid." The student watched the water closely. It looked the same moment to moment, yet it was never the same water. "This can be frightening," the master said. "Some people stop here. They feel lost. They believe nothing is real anymore." The student felt a familiar echo of this feeling. "But this is not the end," the master said gently. They sat by the river in silence. The sound of water filled the space between them. "Understanding does not destroy the world," the master said. "It changes how tightly you hold it." The master picked up a smooth stone and held it in their palm. "To the untrained eye," the master said, "this is just a stone. To the analyzing mind, it is minerals, pressure, time. Both views are true, but neither requires you to stop calling it a stone." The master placed the stone back on the ground. "After understanding," the master said, "you return to the ordinary world. You still see mountains, you still cross rivers, but now you know they are not what they appear to be, and you are no longer trapped by appearances." The student felt something settle quietly. "In the beginning," the master said, "you cling to things because you believe they are permanent. In the middle, you reject things because you believe nothing is real. In the end, you see clearly and you live freely." They began walking back. "Mountains are mountains again," the master said, "but now you don't need them to stay forever. Rivers are rivers again, but now you don't panic when they change course." That night, the student reflected on this teaching. Understanding wasn't about escaping the world. It was about returning to it without fear. Tonight, you can rest in this same return. You don't need to dismantle your life to find peace. You don't need to analyze existence to exhaustion. You can let things be what they are. Your body is a body. Your bed is a bed. Your breath is a breath. Thoughts may arise and say, "This isn't enough." Let them pass like water under a bridge. Feel the simplicity of this moment. The mind doesn't need to be elevated to rest. It needs permission to stop striving. Mountains do not try to be profound. Rivers do not question their purpose. They simply are. Inhale, steady like a mountain. Exhale, flowing like a river. Understanding at its deepest is not dramatic. It is quiet, ordinary and deeply kind, and in that ordinariness you can finally let go, settling into the simple, peaceful fact of being here. Let the mountain stand, let the river flow, and let sleep come naturally as night falls over both. A traveller once came to a quiet monastery at the edge of a forest. The path was narrow, lined with fallen leaves and the gentle curve of roots beneath the soil. The traveller's mind was heavy, full of questions, worries, and the restless need to understand everything all at once. They approached a teacher who was sitting under a large old tree. Its branches stretched wide, leaves rustling softly in the wind, and the trunk was thick and gnarled with age. The teacher's presence was calm, like the tree itself, steady, deep, and unhurried. "Teacher," the traveller said, "I have tried to understand emptiness, to see clearly, to live without clinging, but I still feel restless. My thoughts are constant. My mind never rests." The teacher did not speak at first. Instead, they gestured toward the tree, then the forest beyond, and finally the sky above. "Look at all of this," the teacher said quietly. "Everything you see, everything you hear, everything you feel. It arises, it changes, it passes, and yet it is not gone. It is part of a greater movement you cannot hold, yet it holds you nonetheless." The traveller tried to focus, but the mind was noisy. Questions arose. How can I rest when the world is so complicated? How can I let go when so much demands attention? The teacher nodded, understanding without judgment. Rest does not come by chasing it. Rest comes by letting go of the chase. You do not find emptiness by seeking it. You find it by allowing yourself to stop. The traveller listened as the wind passed through the leaves carrying the scent of earth, the soft rustle of life. Birds called in the distance and a faint trickle of water came from a nearby stream. "Everything makes noise," the teacher said. "Your mind, the world, your memories, your worries. But listen carefully, not to silence, but to the space within the noise. That space is your natural rest. That space is emptiness." The traveller closed their eyes as if attempting to feel this space. Thoughts surged. Plans for tomorrow, regrets from yesterday, fears of what might come, but beneath them there was a subtle openness, a quiet that had always been present yet unnoticed. "You cling to what passes and resist what is," the teacher continued. "That is why rest feels distant. But when you stop grasping and stop resisting, everything arrives on its own. Your breath flows without command. Your body relaxes without force. Your mind begins to settle, not because you control it, but because you allow it." The traveller noticed how tension had built in the shoulders and jaw, and as the teacher spoke, a slow release began. The body softened. Thoughts no longer felt urgent. They were like leaves drifting down a gentle stream. "Emptiness," the teacher said, "is not a void. It is the vastness in which everything appears. It is the open sky behind clouds, the calm beneath the river's current, the space in which all sensations, thoughts, and feelings rise and fall. You do not need to hold it, define it, or earn it. It is already here, always, waiting for you to notice." The traveller felt a subtle shift. The need to understand, to analyse, to control began to loosen. Each inhale and exhale felt more spacious. The weight of the day, of the mind, of constant striving began to lift. "You've been carrying your own river," the teacher said, "always trying to row against it, always trying to guide it. Tonight, simply float. Allow the current to carry you. Allow yourself to arrive without effort." The traveller lay down beneath the tree, feeling the earth supporting the body. Fingers and toes relaxed. Eyes closed gently. Thoughts continued to drift, but now they were no longer anchored in urgency. Each thought was like a ripple on a vast lake, temporary, passing without lasting harm. "Notice the body," the teacher said softly. "Notice the breath. Notice the gentle rise and fall of sensations. This is enough. This is complete. This is emptiness in action." And slowly the traveller felt sleep approaching, not forced, not commanded, but natural. A deep and effortless relaxation spread from the chest to the limbs, from the mind to the heart. You can do the same now. Lie down and feel the weight of your body resting completely. Feel the rhythm of your breath, slow and steady. Notice thoughts as they arise and let them drift like clouds across a vast sky. Notice emotions and let them flow like water along a stream bed. Moving without resistance, there is no need to fix anything. There is no need to hold anything. Emptiness is not a task to accomplish. It is not a puzzle to solve. It is the natural space in which all experience appears and disappears. Breathe in. The calm is here. Breathe out. The calm spreads. Feel the quiet within the noise, the openness beneath tension, the vastness behind the fleeting shapes of thought. Let the river of awareness carry you gently. Let the sky of consciousness hold you effortlessly. And in this simple, natural recognition, allow sleep to arrive, carrying with it the peace of emptiness, the gentle rest of the present, and the quiet freedom of letting go.